In today's video, we're going to learn how to pandemic-proof your life with a foundation built on the survival rule of threes. Hey guys, I'm Steve, and welcome to Prepare to Live. Today we're going to talk about how to pandemic-proof your life with a foundation built on the survival rule of threes. You might be asking yourself, what are the survival rules of three? You've never even heard of that before. Let me tell you, you've heard them, I'm sure, so let me go through them real quick. First of all, you can survive 3 weeks without food. You can survive 3 days without water. You can survive 3 hours without shelter in a harsh environment. 3 minutes without air, and 3 seconds without hope. I talk to people that are living this homestead survival prepping lifestyle all the time. I've had an opportunity to have a lot of great conversations with people. And those conversations always lead inevitably to what people are doing to get ready if something bad happens. My question is, why wait to see if something bad happens? Why not create the systems to live now so that your life doesn't change if something bad happens? And I want to start talking about these rules because I think that sometimes we get our priorities out of order. The number one thing people in the prepping community talk about is food storage. The second thing that people in the prepping community talk about is weapon and ammo storage. And I understand why. Those are two really cool things. There's lots of gadgets that go along with those things. But if we look at the priorities, the urgency, they're all important because without any of them, a failure to do any of them lead to death. So that makes them all important. But if we look at the urgency of it, then we should start in the beginning. We should start with the smallest time factor and work our way to the biggest time factor. But we're going to start with the biggest time factor and work our way backwards because that pro tip is going to be based off of the smallest sector. So 3 weeks without food. What does that mean? That means that your body can sustain itself for 3 weeks without food. Now that doesn't mean it's going to feel good. You're not going to perform optimally. You're not going to be able to maximize your skills and your resources after 3 weeks. So the important thing is to make sure that you have a strategy taking into account what could happen and when it may happen. There's all kinds of food storage. There's all kinds of food systems. The number one priority or the number one strategy would be to have enough food to survive for a minimum of 3 months is what people tell you. But I want to tell you that probably you need to have a goal of lasting for 6 months without being able to produce any food. What happens if your life is interrupted? What happens if pandemic shuts down the supply chain? What happens in the middle of the winter if that happens when you can't go plant and you can't go produce your own food? So if you get 6 months of shelf-stable food or dried grains, beans, as a matter of fact, I would say 6 months of prepared shelf-stable food. We'll have links for everything that I talk about down in the description of this video for your convenience. So 6 months of shelf-stable food, that's ready prepared food. It's add water and heat for the most part, and you have good nutritious meals that will give you the calories that you need. And caloric density is what you need to pay attention to. Just because something has 30 servings doesn't mean that's 30 meals. You need to understand that in a survival type situation where you're out having to fend for yourself, you're going to need at least 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day to be able to sustain the functions that you need to function to survive. So that 6 months on the shelf of shelf-stable food will have you prepared and ready to go. On top of that, I suggest storing corn, beans, rice, and grains. That you have those on hand because those things last for perpetuity. They really don't have an expiration date. Canned meats and vegetables, those cans last some 12 to 18 months, but many are good for years after their shelf life. But you want to make sure that you're rotating those things through your pantry as you store them. So that means you store them and you take the oldest and you eat it and you put the newest in the back. That way you have a fresh supply and you continue to live off of the system that you're already creating so that your life doesn't go through a drastic change. Here in my life, we have a system in place that if everything fell apart, the only thing we would really miss is a trip to Captain D's or one of those nice, juicy double quarter pounders with cheese. But I think we could get through it because we have some systems in place. Now, you also need to have a production system because it's not enough just to have food storage. Nobody can store enough food to make it forever. So you need to have some kind of production system in place. That means growing your own food. If you only have a patio, it's creating a strategy and a system on your patio. I have a blog at preparedtolive.net that talks about how to turn your patio into a food production system. Maybe you have a small lot in a community, in a subdivision. Then that backyard and that front yard can be a food production system. Maybe you have a homestead and you already have a food production system, but you need to understand that in a survival setting, food production looks different than in a day-to-day food production setting, so that you need to focus on those crops that you get the most calories for. Once again, you can go to the link down in the description below, and I have a caloric density chart, a free PDF download that will tell you exactly how many calories you get from each plant that you can grow in your garden, each tree that you can plant in your yard, and we want you to have it as a free gift to help you plan your strategy for food. So you can survive 3 weeks without food. Don't wait, but you do have some time if everything collapsed tomorrow, but don't wait. Go ahead and put that system in place. The next foundational principle, 3 days without water. Things begin to be urgent when we start talking about days and not weeks. If you only have days, it's hard to get a system in place. And this is one of the most neglected systems that I see talking to this community that we're a part of. It seems like we all here in North America especially take water for granted because it's so readily available everywhere we look. But it is possible we could reach a place where we turn the faucets and water doesn't flow freely. So do we have those systems in place to make sure that we can sustain our families? The goal here is 1 gallon of water per person per day. Now that doesn't mean we're going to drink a gallon of water, but that includes food preparation, basic hygiene and sanitation. So 1 gallon of water per day. I want you to think of it in these terms. A family of 4 can last on 1 case of bottled water per day. So that means if you're going to store 1 month's supply, you need 30 cases of water for a family of 4. You will never store enough water to be able to make it long term. So you need to put some systems in place to make water readily available to you so that you can achieve the maximum production of your skills and your resources to not only survive, but allow your family to thrive when everybody else is just trying to survive. Building a life-proof life is our goal here at Prepared to Live. Water catchment systems are a great way to do that. That's taking the runoff from your home or the runoff from sloped surfaces and catching it inside a container and holding it there for use at a later date. Now, there are some states where this is illegal, but I want to just go ahead and tell you that you need to check your local laws, but you need to come up with a system. Maybe you're around a fresh water supply. Here we have access to a creek, we have access to a lake, but there's still water catchment, and we trap the water that runs off so that we can use it at a later date. And if you're trapping water or you're getting water out of a natural source, you also have to have filtration. A countertop filtration system, gravity fed, is an excellent way to process and to filter that water. There are some great examples. There are some great filters out there. One of the most economical that we found after doing lots of research is the Alexa Pure Pro. It just really beats everything else hands down, and we hope to have a review coming out on that product very soon. Then you also need to have a portable water filtration system like a Sawyer Mini or a water bottle situation, something that will purify the water on the go. But water is an urgent factor that needs to be part of your planning and preparation. 3 hours without shelter in a harsh environment. We live in the foothills of the North Georgia mountains, and we have very few days where the the temperature reaches enough of an extreme that we couldn't get by with just basic provision, basic heat, and basic shelter. But where you live, you may live in very harsh winters or very harsh summers. Those temperatures can reach the place where you can become hypo or hyperthermic, and it can cause death very quickly if you don't have a way to shield yourself from the elements. One of the things that has always perplexed me about the prepper community, the survival community, is that a lot of people's number one strategy for survival is their bug out bag. When you bug out, you're bugging out into the elements. You're leaving the confines of a structure that's created to keep you safe environmentally, and you leave that, and not only are you leaving it to go into the elements, but you're leaving it to go into an unknown situation with other people that are looking for the things you have. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't bug out. If you live in an urban setting, that may be your only option. Let me give you an extra pro tip today. Pro tip number one for the video. If you live in an area that's already been set on fire, that's already had an autonomous zone set up, if you live in an area that's incredibly socially unrestable, then you need to leave now. You need to move to another place right now. If you can't do that, you may have to settle for bugging out. You need a warm shelter, a warm sleeping bag, and you need to understand how to make fire with multiple elements. But I would advise you to get into a place where you can create systems that will sustain you long term by hunkering down instead of bugging out. 3 minutes without air. We immediately think of drowning when we think about being without air, but there are many factors that can render us unconscious from lack of air. Bleeding, choking, puncture wounds to the chest or the abdomen, an allergic reaction. There's so many different things that can cause us to have our air passage cut off. And if we don't know how to clear those air passages, if we don't know how to render that first aid, then we can find ourselves in a world of hurt. If you're not CPR certified or Stop the Bleed certified, you probably need to pause this video, Google CPR certification near me, and get those vital certifications. 3 seconds without hope. I know that this is not one that's mentioned very often, but without clear thought, you will disrupt every system and go astray every time something bad happens. When there is no hope, panic sets in. When panic sets in, clear thought and strategy go out the window. You must already have a plan and know what's going to happen or what could happen and be ready to solution that at all costs. You need to plan for everything, be ready for anything, and hope that you don't ever need a thing. But the skills and the resources necessary can help you have a life that is not based on panic or responsivity to the things around you, but that you can be proactive and that you can build those systems and resources if you start now. Now, guys, I promised you a pro tip, and if you've liked the information in this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit that thumbs up and let us know that you're enjoying the product and the information that we're giving you. But here's the pro tip. You need to start doing something today, because the most immediate action is loss of hope. If your family loses hope when things go bad, you're in for a situation that not many people are ready to handle. So you need to go ahead today and start planning your strategy. You need to go ahead and begin to purchase 1 bucket of shelf-stable food. You need to go ahead and buy 1 filtration system. You need to go ahead and buy a first aid kit and register for a CPR class. We've got links to everything that we use down in the notes of this video below. So check those out and feel free to use our plan to be the basis of your plan. But put something in place now. And don't just put something in place, but begin to talk to your family about the plan that's in place. Go ahead and prep and make those strategies. Go ahead and have those diagrams and those plans in place that when things go wrong, you're ready. That when everybody else is panicking, you're full of hope because you're ready and you're prepared. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this video. I'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, ring that bell, and give us a thumbs up. Guys, from our family at Prepared to Live to yours, Have a good night.